Where is it?
I got knocked down
Did
to
it
half.
drop in? Drop it in? Where's Jake?
Yeah, he's coming.
Yeah, 'cause, you know, if something comes up, I just go.
That's what I do. Thank you. Cheat sheet? Okay. All right, good. Okay, this is for the budget, okay.
Who's that?
Active in it. There's a pro. You're pro.
Just in time.
There's like a amateur actor.
Yeah, no, everybody's settled, so.
You're gonna put a kitchen over
Thanks,
your
Julie.
new Taj Mahal?
All right, we're gonna go.
I'm ready.
Effective buying.
Evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, and we're going to call the Kerrville City Council meeting to order. And we will start with an invocation and pledge from Councilman Herring.
Thank you. Please join me in prayer. Lord, thank you for this community. Thank you for the people of this community and the hopes and aspirations and dreams of this community. Thank you for this council and government. Help us to listen and to be respectful and to seek your will. Thank you for this beautiful weather. We could use some more rain if it's possible. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Stuart, you have some announcements for us.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome to everybody tonight. Just a few announcements. We don't have anything from Parks and Rec this week. They are right in that last stage between the end of spring break and the explosion of things that happened beginning in late April and early May. But we do have a lot of library activity, so I put some of these up here and I yellowed in the days between this meeting and the next meeting. And there's quite a few things, so I'll just mention a few. Story time and team gaming are this week. And then next week, yoga story time, team crafting, and then on Saturday, the 22nd, we have a Disney 100th anniversary party. And I looked it up today. Disney was actually established October of 1923. So we encourage everybody to come celebrate all things Disney at the library. There'll be craft, Disney trivia snacks, and a scavenger hunt, and that's generally aimed to ages 9 to 18. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. That's for the kids. Change my slide. For the adults, we have several reading groups. The Readers Mixed Book Club this week. And then Saturday, we have a guest speaker, Kevin Hartley from the Sierra Club, and he'll be talking about his travels in the Chihuahuan Desert. Imagine a desert full of chihuahuas. I'd love to go there. But encourage people to show up for that. And Food for the Soul next week. And then the NPSOT, it took me a minute to figure that one out. That is the National Plant Society of Texas. We have book club next Wednesday. Mystery Fiction Book Club Thursday. The Native Plant Society has a film on Saturday. And then on the 23rd, we begin National Library Week. So looking forward to that. One more announcement. KPD has Drug Take Back Day, and that will be Saturday, April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you have any unwanted medications, expired, unused that you want to turn in, go by the KPD parking lot there on Sidney Baker, follow the signs to the back, and there'll be a volunteer to pick up your medication and dispose of it properly. So I would do that annually. I think it's annual. And so it's about that time. Two times a year. Okay, 2 times a year. About that time. And then, Mayor, we were talking earlier. I think like the rest of us, you're pretty excited about NASA.
Oh, yeah.
So did you want to?
That's awesome.
Other than, you tell us what you know. You probably know more than I do.
Well, they'll be here for the total eclipse, which is April the 8th of next year. So just about a year from now. And I think we're one of 2 places in the country. Phoenix is the other one.
I'll be here for both the October and the April.
I was
Oh, I
thinking they
know.
would
Okay.
be here
Both
for both.
Great.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that. That's,
We'll have more information, but that's exciting that we've been picked.
Right.
Yes, so,
big deal.
good deal,
All right.
yes.
That's my announcements. Do y'all have anything?
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi,
Oh.
go ahead, please. I didn't see you. Go ahead,
okay.
please.
I'm cleaning out a house right now, and I have stumbled across some drug paraphernalia. It's not injectables stuff, it's just other stuff. Does that qualify to go to the drug buyback program?
No, if you'll just contact us, we'll.
Okay, you got it. Thank you.
Okay, Joe?
Just briefly, the library had a planetarium not long ago, I guess a couple weekends ago. Carol and I went, we had a good time, so I want to say thank you to the library staff for letting that happen, and I learned a lot. I learned I don't like to sit on that floor, for one thing. But anyway, thank you for making that happen.
That's good, that's good. All right, you have one?
Just as everybody's probably aware, we have an election coming up, starting in 2 weeks, early voting, so just make sure you make a plan to go vote, because it's going to be here before we know it.
Okay, and we have some presentations to make tonight. So the first is the Kerrville Kindness, recognizing our friends of the library. So if they will please come up front. We've got a number of you here tonight.
This one can come right. How are you?
Some of you, are you not part of the friends in the corner? Come on. Just go right down here.
More the merrier.
Yes.
Everybody dance.
Okay, just, I'll move this way and you guys move that way. All right. City of Kerrville recognizes the Friends of the Library with the April 2023 Kerrville Kindness Award for their leadership, dedication, and tireless work in supporting the mission of the Bud Holsworth Memorial Library. The City of Kerrville extends its most sincere thanks to the Friends of the Library for embodying and I knew I was going to stumble on that word. Exemplifying the very best of Kerrville kindness. Through the Friends of the Library's efforts, the citizens of Kerrville have been able to benefit from expanded collections, programming, and services at the Bud Holsworth Library. And this is signed by all of us, and we say thank you. Now, I'm going to have you turn around and shake hands in just a minute, but we're going to do a proclamation first. You are welcome. All right, now for our proclamation. City of Kerrville proclamation. Whereas the Friends of the Library was established in April of 1953 and will be celebrating 70 years as a nonprofit organization. And whereas the Friends of the Library have worked tirelessly to raise funds and secure volunteers to continuously support the mission and objectives of the Bud Holsworth Memorial Library. And whereas the Friends of the Library has enriched the lives of many in our community through their continued support of the Bud Holsworth Memorial Library. And whereas sincere gratitude is extended to the individuals who have given their talents and resources to make the Bud Holsworth Memorial Library an important educational and recreational destination in our community. Now therefore, I, Judy Eichner, Mayor of the City of Kerrville, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Friends of the Library Appreciation Month right here in Kerrville, Texas, and we encourage all citizens to join in celebrating the history and legacy of the Friends of the Library, and it is signed by me. So we thank you all very, very much, and I would like two things. I would like all of you to tell us who you are, and if you have a special association with the library or the Friends group, and say it loud and clear so everybody can hear you. So we'll just start right here.
Hey, I'm Sky Alexander. I'm the president of the local Friends of the Library.
I'm Martha Mitchell. I'm the former president of the Friends of the Library, and I'm involved I love books. so it was a natural thing for me.
I'm Jennifer Dashel, and me and my daughter both volunteer there together on Wednesdays, and I'm on the board and on the library advisory board for them, so.
And I'm Kay Stewart, and I'm the treasurer for the Friends of the Library. And I'm a former library employee in another city, so I just can't stay away from libraries. They're my happy places, so. And I'm also on the library advisory board for the city.
I'm Marion Clemens, and I'm a worker bee for the Friends of the Library. I've worked in libraries since 1978. And like Kay, I love libraries.
I'm Lenore White, and I've been volunteering at the Friends of the Library for about 6 years, and I'm on the board, and I do the publicity, the newsletter, and the press releases, and I love libraries too.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Silva, and I just like to help out as much as possible.
Phyllis Young, I've been there probably 7 years or so, and it's been a labor of love. I do the large print collection and several other things, and it's a privilege to be able to serve you all in that respect.
Okay, and at the end?
Daniel Brigatti, library director, and we have an amazing friends group. You know, to Joe's point, the recent mobile planetarium, they provided the funds for that. They provided the funds for the large print collection, our audiobook collection, a lot of our summer reading programs, the neighborhood enhancement vehicle that we have our library days. They also helped provide funds for HHC that's going in next door. So we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that we are able to do because of their hard work.
So in an average year, how much will the Friends earn that goes to the library? Just a ballpark a year.
It's hard to tell because we not only raise money through memberships, which is really a small part, but also we get donations, and those donations can be anywhere from $10 to thousands of dollars. We've also sometimes wind up, hint, hint, in people's estate planning. So that works out well, and that helped us a lot in the last few years because Danielle had some pretty expensive things on her wish list. So it does depend a lot year to year. Good.
Did we miss somebody back there?
Yes.
Nobody.
This is my reference services librarian, Diana Miller. She's our newest librarian, and she is a wonderful asset to our team.
And I really admire the Friends. I came from Miami, huge city. They didn't have anything as good as this.
So, our loving hearts here, so that's great. Well, do you need another picture with the proclamation? All right, somebody needs to hold it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for all that you do for us. We appreciate it. And turn around and shake a hand of a council member.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you very much. We appreciate what you do.
What I should have said, I learned I'm too old this time.
You always start with the meeting. Mosley.
Okay, the next, I'm going to turn over to the chief. Let you handle this, and then we'll do a proclamation after that.
Good job.
Well, I appreciate that, Mayor. I would like to, Mayor Council, I'd like to introduce Chief Brian Vorauer. He's here tonight representing the Texas Police Chiefs Association, is going to present us with our reaccreditation certificate.
Thanks. Thank you, Chief. Honorable Mayor, council members, and members of the Kerrville community, good evening. My name is Brian Vorauer. I'm the Chief of Police at the Fredericksburg Police Department, and I'm a member of the Texas Police Chiefs Association. I am honored this evening to present the Texas Police Chiefs Association and the Best Practices Program. The Texas Police Chiefs Association is comprised of over 1,500 professional police chiefs throughout the state who are dedicated to improving the delivery of quality police services. I'm here this evening to present the Kerrville Police Department with a certificate of reaccreditation for continuing to maintain their compliance with the Texas Law Enforcement Best Business Practices for law enforcement for the past 4 years. Several years ago, the Texas Police Chiefs Association developed an accreditation program for Texas law enforcement. Many of you know about the accreditation programs for schools, universities, and hospitals. They are all programs of professional excellence and all require proof of compliance with a set of professional standards. Ours is similar. It is a voluntary program where agencies must prove they meet or exceed 170 different standards. These standards are based on Texas law, Texas court decisions, and contemporary best practices as identified by the Texas Police Chiefs Association. The program goals are to reduce risk and associate costs, improve management and operations of Texas law enforcement agencies, and improve protection of citizens and officer safety. Best practices cover aspects of law enforcement operations such as use of force, protection of citizen rights, pursuits, property and evidence management, and patrol and investigation operations. This program has become the new gold standard for professional law enforcement in Texas, and agencies across the state are working diligently to meet these requirements. Approximately 16 years ago, the Kerrville Police Department first attained their accreditation status with TPCA. The agency conducted a complete audit of all its policies, procedures, and operations in order to meet these standards. Accredited status is awarded for a 4-year period. Since that time, the agency has submitted annual reports to ensure they continue to meet standards and provide the citizens of Kerrville with effective police services. In October of 2022, 2 trained assessors, police chiefs, from other parts of our state spent 2 days conducting an assessment of the Kerrville Police Department. These assessors interviewed staff, inspected facilities and operations, met with field officers, and ensured compliance with all standards. Their report was sent to the recognition committee, comprised of 9 active police chiefs from around the state who reviewed the report and voted to award accreditation status. During this process, the Kerrville Police Department has once again proved it meets or exceeds the best practices for professional law enforcement in Texas. Over 788 municipal police agencies in Texas, only 190 agencies have achieved accreditation status, and fewer than that have been reaccredited. This evening, we officially recognize the Fredericksburg Police Department for their outstanding performance. I knew I was going to do that.
You couldn't help it, I know.
knew I was going to do that. I apologize, Chief. All right. This evening, we officially recognize the Kerrville Police Department for their outstanding performance. And what does that mean for your community? The accreditation program assures the citizens of the community and the city mayor, council, of the highest quality of service from their police agency. It ensures well-developed policies and procedures that meet or exceed the best practices for Texas law enforcement, and the employees are provided clear and appropriate guidance. It means your police department is one of the very best in this state. The certificate we present this evening is symbolic. While it clearly marks the professional excellence, the real value of the program is in the men and women of the police department and the process they must complete to receive the certificate. Once an agency reaches accreditation status, continued participation provides for continuous periodic review of the agency's policies and procedures, operations, and service. The Kerrville Police Department is a leader in law enforcement in Texas. You should be very proud of their accomplishment. Chief McCall, please accept my congratulations to you and to your team for your excellent work. So on behalf of the Texas Police Chiefs Association, it's going to be hard to read. There we go. To all that see the certificate, know that the Kerrville Police Department, having fulfilled the necessary qualifications and mandatory requirements of the Texas Police Chiefs Association, Texas Law Enforcement Best Practices Accreditation Program, by voluntarily providing their compliance with the Texas Law Enforcement Best Practices, the Texas Police Chiefs Association Foundation Board of Directors does hereby award this certificate of accreditation effective 16th day of November 2022 through 2026.
Chief, do you have some people you would like to come up and take a picture with you?
Yes, anybody from the police department, if you guys would come up and let's grab a picture.
Yes, come on up.
Come on.
Thank you for coming. I'm sorry, thank you for coming.
Squeeze in. Come on. Stuart, what do you think? Got enough for everything? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tinley's not smiling. All right. Over here.
And if we can't see you, Frank, can you pull out?
Come out a little, there we go. Perfect.
All right, turn around and shake a council person's hand and thank you again. And our telecommunicators can stay up here.
Hey.
Man, I bet they just in store.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Probably for me.
All right, you guys decide how you're gonna stand. This is another group that we don't hear much from you guys. And when I went through the police, it was great to be able to go up and see your little corner. It's not very big. And to see what you do, because I don't think I could do what you guys do, and we appreciate you very much. So we have a proclamation for you. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. When an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Kerrville Police Department Emergency Communications Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators, you guys, are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. Public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas the Kerrville Police Department Public Safety telecommunicators have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. Each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now therefore, I, Judy Eichner, Mayor of the City of Kerrville, Texas, do hereby proclaim the week of April 9th through April 15th, 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And I encourage all citizens to join me in honoring all of you, the men and women, whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. And we thank you. I'd like to have all of you tell us your name, how long you've been doing what you're doing, and if you have anything special you'd like to add, please feel free. Well, we'll start down there.
My name is Tinley Sanchez. I just hit a year at KPD.
Wonderful.
My name is Carla, and I've been there for a year.
Okay.
I'm Catherine, I'm night shift supervisor, been there for 4.5 years.
I'm Christina Germany, been with KPD 8 months, but I've been dispatching 5.5 years.
And my name is Frank Galavan, I'm the dispatch manager. I've been with the Kerrville Police Department for 5 years, and before that, 28 years with the Department of Public Safety.
I'm Danielle Ray. I've been with this department for 2.5 years, and been doing it for 5 years. I was with Seguin Police Department for 2.5 years.
And stole you away. Well, and our first, tell me your first name again.
Tinley.
Tinley came out of Tivy High School and was one that was honored, and she picked her career, and so she was honored a year ago as being chosen, and she's been here for a year, and thank you. We appreciate that. All right, let's get a picture. Let you guys hold this. All right.
I think we were out of the statements put it all together, you and I. I couldn't do what y'all do. Man, thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to all of you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, at this time, we will have our visitors and citizens forum. Shelley, do we have anybody?
Citizen speakers signed up.
All right, thank you. And we will move on to number 4, our consent agenda. We have 2 items on it. They are minutes each. Do we have a motion to approve?
Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it passes 5-1. Thank you. I'm sorry. Well, I keep saying 5-1. I don't know what the problem is. Okay, I'll work on that. 5-0. Thank you. All right, we will move on to 5A. Shelley, if you'll read that in for us, please.
Ordinance number 2023-16, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of City of Kerrville, Texas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Improvement Bonds, Series 2023, approving and authorizing an official statement, authorizing the execution of a purchase contract and a paying agent registrar agreement, and approving and authorizing other instruments and procedures related thereto. This is the first and only reading of this ordinance. And there are no citizen speakers signed up.
Okay, thank you. Julie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a quick presentation for you guys here. Just kind of as a quick reminder of where we've come from, all the way back to discussions in November with the water and wastewater master plan and near and long-term needs that we talked about, to January when we brought the near-term things to you and discussed how we're going to pay for these, of course. And then following with the resolution adopted on January 24th, and then our revenue forecasting that we talked about just this past month. So kind of just a little bit of reminder of where we were. This is just an outline of our timetable. We've talked about this several times. We did have pre-pricing yesterday and pricing today. I'm going to let Ann talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. With this approval of this bond, the approval of the ordinance tonight, then we'll be able to actually conduct the sale tomorrow. So if you have any questions about anything related to this, we have everybody here that can speak to it. So Ann is with us from Hilltop, and Jay is with us from Bond Council as well. So we have all the bases covered for any questions. With that, I'm going to hand the podium over to Ann to kind of talk you through the sale, a little bit of market information that you might want, and then we'll follow up with any questions you might have, and then what action we're asking from you tonight. Ann?
Ann, thanks for being with us.
Yes, ma'am. Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you so much for this opportunity to be back in Kerrville. Before we actually talk about the transaction, we wanted to give you an update on the rating. So as you're very familiar, when I've been with you before, we have talked about your ad valorem tax rating. This is the first time in a number of years that the city pursued a revenue bond rating. So essentially, we were really kind of starting from scratch because revenue bonds have several components to them that ad valorem tax bonds do not. We are very fortunate at our firm. We hired a gentleman about 18 months ago named Ted Chapman, who was with Standard & Poor's for over 20 years, and he actually wrote the water and wastewater criteria that they utilized. So working very closely with your staff, we sent him significant information in advance, and he went through and put it through his version of the model and said he believed that the city would come out with an A+ rating. And that is the rating that the city did receive. And I thought I'd take just a couple of moments to highlight some of the things that they talked about. They talk about your ongoing residential and commercial development that's going to continue to support your operating revenue growth. They talked about affordable rates when they compare to the medians that they look at, moderate debt to capitalization ratio of around 50%, good overall system operational management, and they were very interested and very focused on the diversification of the water supply that the city has, and they felt like that was, from a strategic perspective, very positive from a long-term view. They also talked about your good financial management policies and practices, the forecasting that your staff does, the updates to the CIP, you've got investment, debt management, and reserve policies. And again, we talked about this when I was here for your GEO bond sale. Especially with the brand new credit, we got a very extensive list of questions from Standard & Poor's. And it also came with a operational survey where they wanted to know a lot of details about your system. And again, your staff, led by Mr. Hoppy, Ms. Behrens, and Ms. Rodriguez, and I know that they relied a lot on your utility system as well to help go through and compile all this information. Again, we know that that takes a lot of time, but they provided all of the information in advance and the responses to the questions in writing in advance of the call. And Standard & Poor's was so complimentary because that really helps them and allows it to be a much more meaningful phone call. So they spent a lot of time and effort in helping to get to this point. One of the things I did want to highlight, and we talked about there's a little bit of a kind of a nuance to revenue bonds. We have a rate covenant, which means you have to have your rates on a net basis, which is your gross revenue minus your operating expenses, but it does not include depreciation. Has to be at least 1.25 times annual debt service, and we'll show you that when we get to the back. You also have to have what's called an additional bonds test, which means if you're going to issue additional revenue bonds, we have to be able to demonstrate that your existing debt service plus your new debt service, when it's put together, is going to be at least 125. And one of the things about revenue bonds is many times they require a reserve fund. So that means you either have to come out of cash in the system or you have to come out of bond proceeds to fund the reserve fund. Well, there's been a lot of evolutions, and because of the overall strength of your system, we believed we could put in place what's called a springing reserve fund. So as long as for 2 consecutive years, your debt service coverage does not fall below a 135, then you do not have to have a reserve fund. And what we were trying to do is to put in place flexibility with the covenants and make sure we got that at least the A+ rating. But if you didn't have to use cash to fund a reserve fund, that's cash that you can deploy to ongoing CIP or PAYGO or things like that. So we were really excited that when we looked at the covenants to be able to get that one and still be able to achieve the A+ rating. One of the other things which is a part of this transaction, which you don't see on your general obligation bonds just because of your strong rating, is what we call municipal bond insurance. So just to explain what that is, there are municipal bond insurance companies, and they provide municipal bond insurance, which is routinely used in the market for credits that are in the A category or lower. And what the municipal bond insurance companies do is they provide an unconditional guarantee to pay principal and interest on a timely basis to the bondholders. And Councilman Herring may remember, because years ago, we saw a lot more of the municipal bond insurance companies, because back then they were all AAA rated. After 2008, we now only have two primary municipal bond insurance providers, and they're AA. But what we do is we sent your information to them, and they did, again, another detailed review of credit analysis, because if they're going to take on their ability to pay your debt, if you don't, they want to make sure that, one, that doesn't happen, but two, if it does, that it would be an anomalous situation, and there would be a way for them to recover that. So the two firms that and the reason that that is so helpful is when you price, you actually price on their rating, which is AA, and that's a higher rating than your A+. So what we do is we request it, we get the premiums back, and then we analyze them to make sure that they make economic sense. So we sent to the two primary firms. We have, one of them is Build America Mutual, also called BAM, you may hear them advertise, and then Assured Guarantee. And it's a complete independent, they come back with their bids, and both of them bid 24 basis points, which I haven't had that happen in quite a while. Both firms trade just equally, but we've had some real positive results with BAM lately, so we worked with the underwriters and we decided to utilize BAM. And with their 24 basis points, going into the analysis, that would result in a premium of about $51,000, but we projected that based on the AA ratings, that you would save just under $665,000 in debt service by utilizing the municipal bond insurance. So for us, we were able to pass the threshold that said this brings economic benefit. So for your consideration this evening, we were given guidance that we were going to look to put a deposit to the project fund of $11.5 million, and the par amount of these bonds is $12,090,000. We do have premium. You may remember premium again that we've had before, just under $600,000, and that can be used to fund projects and proceeds. We show the capitalized interest, which will help to pay the interest until the projects are in place and being able to be utilized, cost of issuance, and then the bond insurance is included in there. This looks very familiar. The particular interest rate for your consideration this evening is 3.96%. And what I'd like to do, on the next couple of pages, I'll be able to give you a little bit more insight as to where we started was not at a 3.96, and it's because your bonds priced so well that we were able to reprice favorably. So just as a comparison, when I was before you back in January, at that time, we had projected that your par amount would be $12,705,000, and the par amount for your consideration is $12,090,000. Both had the project fund deposit of $11,500,000. At that point in time, we projected a 4.60. The rate we have tonight is a 3.96. We had a standard 10-year call, a 33 call. We were able to negotiate a 9-year call without it costing the city any additional monies. And when we look at the total debt service is over $2.3 million less than we projected when we were before you in January. When, just a quick cash flow, this shows what the coverage looks like. We have your projected net available for debt service, this debt service, and only this debt service, because this is the only revenue debt that you have outstanding. You can see your coverage is over 10 times in many of the years as we look at this. Now, it's important to remember that after you pay your revenue bond debt service, you still have self-supporting certificates of obligation, which are funded by the waterworks and sewer system. So the balance of these monies after you pay your revenue bonds will go to pay your self-supporting certificates of obligation. And then there are also other transfers that the city makes, so the funds will be utilized for that as well. But to help understand how we were able to get to where we are today, in our markets we have a program that's called Game Day, and it's an internet-based opportunity to watch what the underwriters are doing, and we can see the orders that come in real time. And so, as you get to the back end of the amortization schedule, many times we have what are called term bonds. Investors like to have a little bit bigger par amount, and they understand that the bonds may get called, so you ultimately end up with the level debt service that we have structured, but it just gives a little bit more principal to attract a little bit bigger institutional buyer. So we had term bonds out in 48 and 53. So if you look from 27 to 43, we basically were 1 times coverage. But if I may draw your attention to the blue bar at the top right, in 2048, you had 15.2 times more orders than we had bonds. And in the 53 maturity, you had 10.6. So clearly investors loved these bonds, especially out on the back end. And so what we were able to do is when the bonds are that oversubscribed, we come back in and we reprice it. So what that means is in both the 48 and the 53 maturity, we reduced the yield by 11 basis points. And on the 53 term, we were able to reduce the coupon by 1/8, 12.5 basis points. And so by doing that, it was interesting. We started this morning in the pricing process at about a 403, a 404. But because of the significant interest that you had in your bonds and being able to make that 11 basis point reduction, that's how we went from a 403, 404 down to a 3.96 for your consideration. And the other thing which I thought was really interesting is on the next page, we show who submitted orders. So one of the biggest names out in the investment world, especially for bonds, is PIMCO. So PIMCO turned in orders for $6.3 million. And if you see there, the second one there, PIMCO, it says SMA. That stands for Separately Managed Accounts. So that's national retail. Those are individuals who wanted your bonds. And what is interesting is, again, after 2008, before we saw a lot of individuals who just bought bonds on their own. But again, after kind of that market dislocation, we saw the emergence of what are called separately managed accounts, and that's where individuals rely on investment managers to find bonds for them and then put them in their investment accounts. And like I said, PIMCO, Edward Jones, Maritime, Bluefin, 16th Amendment, Alliance Global, Frost Arb, Wells Fargo, Hancock. I mean, these are stellar names in the investment community, and I thought it was really important to highlight these for you because it is your name and your credit that attracted these investors, which allowed us to have such a significant reprice and lower your true interest cost the way that it was. So just in summary, we absolutely recommend that you accept the bid from FHN and Raymond James. They really did a phenomenal job, and I hope the pages that I just showed you reflect the tremendous job that they did. It never hurts to have a good market to help you along the way, but they certainly worked it and they came prepared for the transaction. The interest rate that you would be approving is the 3.96, which is 64 basis points less than what we had projected in January. We talked about debt service savings of $2.3 million lower. The par amount is $615,000 less. And as I always do, this is a true collaborative effort. I know I'm the one that stands up here, but you have an amazing team that starts with your staff. We cannot do this without all of their work, and we know how many different hats they wear throughout the day, and they always made time to be available for the documents, for the rating call, for the due diligence call. And we greatly appreciate it because that's one of the reasons we're here, to be able to present this kind of bid for you this evening. Again, we want to thank Bond Counsel. Jay is here. I know Ms. Behrens introduced him earlier with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton, and his partner, Tom Spurgeon. Again, the underwriters, as I mentioned, they really did a phenomenal job today. And finally, we just want to say thank you on behalf of Hilltop Securities and how grateful we are to have had our long-term relationship with the city, be able to be a part of your team and to help you with this transaction. I'm not going to go into it, but we do have market updates. I have in the back of this, I have the rating report, and we have the detailed numbers. So at this time, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Council, good news.
Yeah.
Good news. Wonderful news. Anybody? Any questions?
No, I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
Joe?
What I think I heard you say was, I'm trying to translate this back down to, because of the excellent work of our finance department and the work of Hilltop, we save almost $2.5 million on interest. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And Bond Counsel and the underwriters.
I don't want to leave out Bond Counsel.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful news. In a world where such financial uncertainty exists, to have such an excellent staff and representative at Hilltop and Bond Counsel and city management, that's wonderful news. That really reflects well on all of y'all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I had a couple of questions on the rating. We got a copy of the ordinance before us this evening because, of course, we weren't sure what all the numbers were going to be. So the one that we got just had some blank spots, but I'll get to that in a minute. I wanted to touch on where you started off with the city's credit rating. Could you help me understand how that works? Because we have now an A+ right now with our credit rating. I think before we had a AA. So does that mean our situation and our rating went down? And what does that do for the city?
Councilman, thank you. That's a really good question. The AA rating you have is based on ad valorem tax debt.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get
The
out there.
A+ you have is based solely on water and sewer revenues.
Thank you.
So, yes, sir, thank you for asking that and for the clarification. They are two very separate credits, very separate pledges, and as such, they have very different ratings.
I appreciate the clarification on that because that's what I understood. I was hearing, of course, a couple of things that were contrary to that, and I thought they were separate because we do those separately. So thank you for that clarification. I also wanted to clarify when you said that the remainder of the proceeds in this bond could go towards paying off the current CO that we have. Did I understand that correctly?
So what happens is with a revenue bond, I think about it like a waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your revenues come in. The first thing you have to do is pay all your operating expenses. Mm-hmm. Now, because you have revenue bonds, the next source that can be used for those monies will go to pay the revenue bonds. Mm-hmm. After the revenue bonds are paid, then you have it's net available after debt service.
Right.
And so it's not spoken to in this ordinance authorizing these bonds.
Okay.
But what will happen after that is after you've paid your annual revenue bond debt service, then you will pay your existing certificate of obligation debt that is self-supporting and paid for by the water works and sewer system. And then the city does have transfers, your overhead allocation to the general fund and some other transfers for the benefit of the utility system. So then those dollars can go to take care of those, we call them below the line item obligations.
Okay, thank you. And my last question I had, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the ordinance that's presented for us, but I was looking at the rating that we were presented, the interest rate of 3.96, and the interest rate that's on page 3 of the document. Can you help me understand? That has 5%, and I may be just missing something a little bit.
Okay, perfect. So on this particular page, when we sell bonds in the market, investors generally don't want par bonds. Mm-hmm. So that means if you have a 5% coupon, you have a 5% yield. When they're equal, that's a par bond. And investors generally do not want par bonds because very similar to like the investments that the city has, you have to do a mark to market. And so if interest rates go up, then it's going to show you've lost money, but if you hold it to maturity, then you don't. So generally, investors like what we call premium bonds. So if you can see on the front end, they do have a 5% coupon, but on the yield is much lower than that. So what that actually means is on the day of closing, all of the ones that have the 5%, they're not going to pay you $1 for every bond. They're going to pay you $1.05, $1.10, $1.11. So they give you more money. So we can use the premium to help fund your project. But then you actually do pay them 5% back. But the 3.96 is a blended yield that takes into consideration the coupons, the premium, and then the actual yields.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that the interest rate that we presented, it is a little bit different in the document, but that's the reason why.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Thank you.
It's an aggregation of the rate.
Thank you. And we did that before, I think, with another one that we had.
Yes, sir.
I think pretty recently, actually.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, thank you. That's all I got.
Jay, would you like to say a few words? You've come all this way.
I'll introduce myself, Jay Juarez with McCall Parkerson Horton. It's my pleasure to be here. I really don't have anything to add other than what Ann already covered. Nobody really cares about the legal documentation, but I'm here just in case anybody does have any questions about the ordinance or any of the documents that I put in front of you guys. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure working with your staff on this transaction.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, council, are we ready for a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-16 on first and only reading.
Second. We have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Mayor, I'm sorry, there's something else. This is missing some information. I was wondering why. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay, the maturity date in there, the second.
There's no way we just did this today. So a lot of these things will be followed up after the fact, just like last time. So this is information. There are still some blanks, but we literally, just like Ann was saying, we haven't actually sold the bond yet because we need this to do it. Once we sell them, then all those numbers will be filled in.
Okay.
And you'll get an actual full official statement, and you'll get an ordinance with all the plugs in there.
Okay.
It just takes a little while to pull all those legal pieces together, but Jay and his team do that.
Okay, thank you. Apologize, I interrupted.
No,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand, and it is 5-0 and passes. Thank you all very much, staff. Thank you all so very, very much. And Jay and Ann, we just appreciate all your work, and this is, it's good news. Julie, tell your staff thank you.
Yes. They're being modest, these two, and what they do to help us get here, so.
Well, and thank you for your
definitely
kind
appreciate
words about our
that.
staff.
Yeah, definitely
Yes.
appreciate all their help.
Yes. All right. We are ready to move on to 6A. Drew,
Good evening.
let's see. Shelley, we'll have you read it in first.
Ordinance number 2023-12, an ordinance amending Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, by amending said code to revise regulations pertaining to the location of accessory buildings and structures within the front setback as to fences, providing a cumulative clause, providing for severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up, however, this is a public hearing.
Yes. All right.
Good
Drew?
evening, Mayor and Council. This is the update to the zoning code as it relates to the fence setbacks and height and materials. We talked about this at our last workshop. Excuse me. The zoning code, of course, was updated in 2019, and we did have a building code update in 2021 that included the fence permit. This and the following item will relate to those two things. Again, the goals for the fence amendment, as we were reviewing this, was to allow some more flexibility on materials, particularly for non-visibility obstructing fence materials, and to amend the setback or the zoning code to allow those fence restrictions to relate to the zoning district rather than just to the immediate structure on the property. So for particularly your residential neighborhoods, many neighborhoods, the homes are set back farther than the minimum setback. That required fences to be set back that far also. And we had a citizen speak about that. They did go through the zoning board of adjustment for that case as it related to that nuance between the actual home and the front setback line. Then also we wanted to better define what a screening fence is within the code. So here's some of the variety of fencing that we get requests for. The only previous to this amendment, the only thing permitted would be a wrought iron style fence or an ornamental fence. So this is, again, to allow that more flexibility for the hill country and a lot of the requests we get from citizens for fence permits. Here's the section of the code that's amended. This is, of course, 60-50A7. You'll see in the ordinance it goes through all of the zoning districts except the ag district to repeat this section because it relates to every zoning district. Again, allowing better flexibility on materials, making sure we're not obstructing visibility, and setting that to the setback rather than as it relates to the adjacent structure. Of course, second reading will be April 25th. Be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
I have a question. When I was reading this, I remember from us talking last time that we're wanting to allow that kind of fence to go up to the setback. So just when I was reading this, it says no structure in excess of 30 inches in height may exist within a front setback. Within to me seems like it means that you can go to and past the setback. Is that the intent?
Right. So because this is, the actual section relates to more than just fences, no structure is allowed over 30 inches within the setback. So for residential R1, that's your first 25 feet. However, fences are exempt from that and allowed up to 6 feet with non-visual obstructing materials.
But it says within, so it's not just up to the setback. Am I not understanding the text right? I'm just saying, when I think of a setback and I think of something, it's like an encroachment into when it says within the setback instead
Correct.
of up to the setback. We're allowing it to go inside of that setback area.
Correct.
Okay. And then up to the property line? Is that how that works?
Yes, up to the property line. So no fence can go beyond the property line into the public right-of-way or adjacent properties.
And that's what we talked about last time?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you're, okay? Okay. Anyone else with anything before we vote?
We're talking about the structures that are not allowed to be within the front setback over 30 inches. So, for example, if someone wanted to have a bird bath, that's not allowed if it's over 30 inches.
Technically, yes.
Really? Why do we decide to do that?
This is fairly standard language in most zoning codes that any structure as defined by the I guess a birdhouse wouldn't be defined by the building code as a structure, but any structure is defined by the building code is required to meet that setback.
Okay. To me, that seems a little too far. I would like to look at changing that eventually. And then next, can you go back to the images that you had on screen? I wanted to, because I think we talked about this last time, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on the type of fences that are going to be allowed. So if we look at the top one that's made with brick and cement, would that be allowed because the posts are
right
solid and higher than 30 inches? Is that allowed?
Yes, that would be allowed. I'll go back and forth. The solid base up to 30 inches is that lower portion of it. Above 30 inches includes those non-visual obstructing materials, whether it be the wrought iron style fence or those other infill panels.
Yeah.
Obviously, any fence is going to have a vertical column or a post of some kind. So the brick columns would be allowed as well, as long as the infill panel between them are not solid.
Okay, so how, and I don't suggest we go this far into regulating this, but I am curious how it's going to be enforced. Say somebody puts their pillars like 30 inches away from each other, and then that's how they do it. That doesn't seem very see-through, but the material that's within the pillars is see-through.
Right.
So how is that going to be enforced?
That's gonna be at the staff level, reviewing those or the fence permits, showing that it does not meet the intent of the ordinance. The material then no longer, or would then obstruct any view.
Okay, okay.
And to your point, trying to regulate down to what
Yeah.
percentage of material, solid, opaque,
Yeah.
transparent. I've read through several ordinances that get that way, and we end up with 12 pages for fence requirements rather than just one section. So we
imagine.
we looked that direction to try to see how to better define it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it does fall back on staff to review that, to enforce the intent through that permitting process.
Okay. And not in any way was I intending we should go to that extent. I would prefer to stay away from that. And lastly, I was curious, we have several provisions within our code. I think it's in zoning, we have it in our building code that talk about fencing. One of them talks about you have to get the permit for fencing, and then this one is now in, I think this is in the zoning code, right?
That's correct.
So it talks about the setbacks, and because this is a structure, so we're including fence. Why don't we have a separate chapter for fences? That way the public doesn't have to scourge around all of the ordinances to find what applies to their property.
That's gonna be pretty common with any kind of construction. Zoning code regulates kind of the where things can go and the use, whereas the building code regulates how it's constructed. So there is pretty consistent overlap, whether it's building a home, building a commercial building, or building a fence.
Okay. So there'd just be no way to do that.
That's
really?
correct.
Okay. All right, that's fine. That's nothing I
Hey,
feel I was gonna die on. I was just curious why we wouldn't
Yeah.
do something like that.
Each chapter serves separate purposes, and there is certainly some overlap and cross between the two.
Okay. Thank you. Oh,
Let me just add a couple comments. Drew and I talked a little bit earlier today about the columns, and I certainly don't want to go to 12 pages, but I ran out of time to get with him today. We may want to drop something in there that references that, because we don't want to get in a situation where we have, we want, when we adopt something, when you all adopt something, we want people to understand exactly what we mean. We don't want to have to, bring them in and say, well, the intent is this. So we may drop stuff in, not to go to 12 pages or anything. And then a response to the comment by Councilmember Garcia. This is, just typical. So zoning is use, and then you need a building permit, so that's in the building codes. And kind of like short-term rentals, you have a use component to that that's in the zoning code, and then you have the permit process, which is in a separate part of the code. Cities deal with that issue all the time.
Okay. Would that fencing on the bottom left be acceptable because the wood is not see-through? It would?
It would be.
Okay.
So what we may look at, and
I just want to make sure, because when I'm looking at the language, and fencing materials must consist of see-through materials, and wood isn't see-through, right?
yes, we'll look at that as well as the columns on maybe a percentage of material or a percentage of.
Yes, but that isn't the intent. The intent, you can still see through the slats.
Right.
So probably it would be a good idea if there was something on distance for columns, just so that staff doesn't have to try to interpret, and probably would be a good idea.
First and second reading.
We've talked about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions before we go to the public hearing? All right, at 7:03, we will open the public hearing. And we do not have anyone to speak. At 7:03, we will close the public hearing. All right, council, are you ready with what we have before us to make a motion? Would somebody like to do that?
I would move to approve ordinance number 2023-12 with a proposed amendment to ask staff to look at that language of the see-through materials to figure out if there's a better way we can word that. Just because it says that the material must consist of see-through materials. The material being used to build that example fence is wood, and wood is not see-through. And so I just want to make sure that the public knows they don't just have to use that wood is an option as long as it meets the intent of having see-through, so that'd be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion with that change? Oh. Okay.
Does council understand, like, I would like some conversation, that way I'm just, if there's some confusion.
I guess I feel like all materials you can't see through, so it would be like, that would be like saying that you have to use invisible materials. I think the intent of it being a material and you can see around is seeing through. I don't have a problem with it because I don't really think that anybody would think that this meant they had to use. I mean, you can't see through columns, you can't see through, you can't see through anything that's material, but you have to be able to have a line of sight through it.
You make a good point, and I guess, yeah, you make a good point with that. What about, use the term see around it? I just want to make sure that it's clear, because we see the images, but I don't think those images are included as exhibits or something, and maybe we could, if that's something we could do, include some images of acceptable things, that way they understand the language, they can put the language with the picture and they understand. Does that make sense?
Personally, I think that it's okay. What it's saying is you need to be able to see through a fence, and because you have some things there that you don't see through, does not take away from the intent of what it means. So I'm perfectly all right with it.
Did I understand those staff may have some suggested improvements on that language?
On the separation distance?
For the columns. The same may apply to the post and rail. We may look at some maximum or minimum percentage of distance or material
I would
opacity.
certainly entertain clarity between the first and second reading.
In general, that would be good.
Yep.
I'd appreciate that, and if there's any way that we can include images or something visual so that they can see, that would be helpful.
Okay.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-12 on first reading.
Second?
Second. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it passes 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, we have another fencing.
Ordinance number 2023-13, an ordinance amending section 26-38, construction of fences, chapter 26, building and building regulations of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, by clarifying what substantial repairs means, providing for an effective date, and providing other matters related to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
Drew.
Good evening again. This one is related to the building code, the fence permit. We had several questions from citizens as we implemented the fence permit. When looking at repairing a fence, when is a permit required? So consistent with many other sections of the building code, that 50% repair, 50% margin was what we established or determined as that policy of when a permit's required. So we obviously wanted to get that codified so that it is clear to the public when a repair constitutes a permit. So some of these fences are non-conforming because they're existing fences. If they take the entire fence down, they wouldn't be able to replace it. If it's damaged from a storm or something along those lines, they are able to replace it with like and kind materials, although it still requires the permit process. So just try to provide clarity to the customers of when that threshold is met.
All right. Do we think it's clear? Does it,
It's clear.
bring the clarity that we want? All right. At 7:08, we will open no public hearing. Okay. I had down public hearing on this one. All right. It is our first reading. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2023-13 on first reading.
We have a second?
Second?
All in favor, raise your right hand. And it passes 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, 7B.
Ordinance number 2023-14, an ordinance amending in its entirety Article 8, unsafe building abatement of Chapter 26 Building and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kerrville, Texas, regarding the abatement of unsafe buildings, containing a savings and severability clause, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
Caramel,
How are you today?
you're good. And
Good. So I have about 60 slides for y'all. Just kidding. I don't have that many. But I do want to just kind of highlight some of the things that we've talked about from the workshop. The Kerrville 2050 is our guiding strategic force for the city of Kerrville. These are the 3 specific action items to deal with the developing a demolition program and addressing the minimum property standards. To achieve the objectives of the Kerrville 2050 plan, it is necessary to update the city ordinances. And to achieve these specific actions, it is necessary to update the unsafe building abatement ordinance. So it has been 25 years since this ordinance has been updated or amended. For perspective, I did want to kind of highlight what has happened since 2009. There were 11 cases of unsafe structures that were addressed in BB&A. Of those 11 cases, 8 were ordered to be repaired and 3 were ordered to be demolished. From 2010 until 2021, there's only been 1 case before BB&A, and it ordered the structure to be demolished.
Say that again, Guillermo.
From 2010 to 2021, there's only been 1 case before BB&A for an unsafe structure.
Okay.
And that structure was ordered to be demolished at that point in time.
Thank you.
Many cities across the state of Texas have faced lawsuits due to constitutional issues regarding the taking of private property, thus impacting the way cities have enforced their substandard building regulations. The Texas Supreme Court has specifically addressed this issue and has found that Texas cities may continue addressing substandard buildings as outlined in state law. However, the property owner has absolute right to appeal the decision deeming a property a nuisance. This ordinance includes that right and a particular process. That process must include identifying a structure as substandard. The city must then give notice of a public hearing to the owner and any lien holders. At the hearing, the owner, of course, has the right to appear and dispute any city findings. BBA must then issue a written order as to whether the property must be secured, repaired, removed, or demolished. The owner, as mentioned, may appeal the decision. If no appeal is made within 30 days, the city may move forward with taking the action ordered by BB&A and filing a lien against the property for the value of the work. So the following 2 slides highlights the sections of the proposed code that address the major changes in the ordinance. Other changes throughout the proposed ordinance are a result of rewriting for better clarity. After further discussion, we felt that the definition of dwelling would be referenced through the building code's definition. This way, if any changes are made by ICC, those changes will be captured as we adopt the new building code. Also, I want to address section 26243. If you recall, BBA recommended replacing the word building with dwelling. We stated in the workshop we were fine using either or. After further review, we felt that the building definition in the ordinance is broader and encompasses all buildings such as commercial buildings. This next page is just the additional major changes that were made to the ordinance. Questions?
I thought it was very well written. I thought that this was really tight. I understood it very well. So
And
for
I think it was
me,
fair.
I
think this is a great document.
Michael did a wonderful job.
It did. One of the things I think that is important, I've had some people mention to me that, oh, good, now we're going to be able to get rid of buildings and this is about safety. This is not the way a building looks from the outside necessarily. And I think it's important that we remember that because this isn't going to take down some of those buildings we'd like to have taken down just because they don't
appeal to
everybody, yes, and don't look like we would like them to look. So this is all based on safety and for the building and anyone who might be occupying it. Questions? Joe, Roman?
I had a discussion with the city attorney about one of the findings in the very first section. And I think, it actually is in the very first paragraph about, it seems that it's been improved. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the very first finding about why those buildings are a problem with public safety. And it might be slightly different than what we've seen earlier. The specific section was threat to public safety and welfare in numerous ways: fire, fuel, breeding of mosquitoes, mice, snakes, and other vermin and insects, harping of vagrants, runaway of minors, stray animals, etc. It was worded slightly different earlier, and it seemed to be overly specific and also limiting about what the council was finding.
On this document right here?
On the one on the screen, I don't know about the document that we have,
Draft?
the paper document.
You want me to speak to that, Councilman O'Hara?
Sorry?
You want me to speak
Please,
to
if you don't mind.
So we did have some communication about that, and so I took his point, and I thought he made a valid point. So I've just dropped runaway minors. We don't care if they're runaway or not. We just don't
Right.
want minors in there. And instead of dealers and users, just drug activities, right? And so
Yeah.
I thought he made a
Yeah.
point, and I was just going to mention that if you didn't.
Okay.
Minor thing, and it wasn't a criticism, it cleaned it up just a little bit for.
All right, thank you.
Just those two amendments?
Well, just
Stated right?
that finding in the first whereas,
Okay.
basically.
Right.
I have a concern with the poor aesthetic appearance wording that's used in that same line there. Just because somebody may have their own idea of what is aesthetically appealing for their house, and I don't think it's our job to say what their house should look like, as long as it's just, if it's a danger to their health and safety, then I think that's where we can enact. I just don't want us to try to say it's aesthetically pleasing.
I like flowers and you don't have flowers, so.
There you
Not
go.
aesthetically pleasing.
Exactly, right? You wouldn't say that. Yeah. So I would suggest if we could remove that, because we do talk about the rest of safety and everything else. That would be my suggestion, if council is open to that.
Aesthetics are harder to find.
Yes.
Yeah, they really are. It leaves kind of room for interpretation.
A good thing.
Are any questions allowed here on this?
We will in just a minute. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we will probably suggest that we take out those words.
Two other things that I had on page 9, I was curious on how the intent was going to be used for this section, page 9 at the top, subsection 10, and this talks about when the board can determine whether a building is unsafe in order that it be vacated, secured, repaired, removed, demolished, and/or occupants relocated. Subsection 10 says that this is one of the standards that they can use to determine that, regardless of its structural condition, if the building is not occupied by the owner, lessees, or other invitees, and is unsecured from unauthorized entry to the extent that it could be entered or used by vagrants or other uninvited persons as a place for harborage, or could be entered or used by children. So, for example, if there was a rental property that somebody had and there was nobody occupying at the time, no renters or anything, if a window was left open and that's unsecure, or if the door wasn't locked, this gives the board the authority to do one of those things, and one of them could be to have it demolished. I'm just concerned that that's where we're going with that.
Well, no, that's not where we're going with that. And you have to remember, this is, I've walked by structures and buildings in the city, and they look fine, but there's side windows that are open, things of that nature. And so to the extent that it would allow for unauthorized entry, we would have a problem with that. But particularly, this is all kind of a complaint-driven process, and so the first thing they would do is they would try to figure out where the owner is and locate that person and say, you know, did you know that you have a window open or the back door has blown open or whatever? And that's how we'd go about that, so.
Okay, thank you. The last one is on page 4, the right of entry, and this talks about the chief building official's authority to enter a building. I'm concerned with subsection C, or well, I guess that's where it starts off, my concern. It talks about subject to a complaint, basically, that the chief building official can enter a building that is occupied. They shall first present proper identification, request entry. If the entry is refused, the chief building official shall have recourse for every legal remedy to secure entry. And then subsection C, no person, owner, or occupant of any building or premise shall fail, after proper identification, to permit entry into a building or onto any property by the chief building official for the purpose of inspection pursuant to this article. And I'm concerned that just to do an inspection, it could be an alleged complaint and it's not based on any evidence or fact. And the chief building official is going to go in and investigate the property. As long as he provides identification, the property owner has no say to say, no, you can't come into my property, according to this chapter.
Actually,
I was finished with that. You can go ahead.
No, that's not entirely correct, because you look at A, and I think this is both in the code and it's our practice. So, again, complaint-driven process. Mr. Garcia and his department gets, you know, a complaint about this. The first thing they're going to do is try to figure out who the owner is and pick up the phone or go out there, right? If they want, and usually this is 99.9% of the time, there is a, you know, kind of a discussion and the owners want to do the right thing. If the owner says, I don't want to comply, I don't want to do what you're doing, you know, Guillermo and his staff are going to withdraw, they're going to come to my office, and we're going to get them a warrant to get onto the property, and that's it. And then if the property owner at that point doesn't allow them to come onto the property with a warrant, this gives us basically an additional citation that we could use to find them in violation of this code. Again, rarely, if at all, that ever happens.
Okay. Could we change the words by giving after proper identification, the property owner shall permit entry? Can we say subject to a legal warrant or something like that? That way they know just because they show me a badge and they're from the city doesn't mean that they can just come into my house to do an inspection. It has to be upon the conditions that you just set out.
I think it covers that if you look at A, you know, subject to compliance with all applicable laws, and then that's it. You know, obviously there's a constitutional law, both the federal and the state, that's going to comply with that. And you know, it probably happens once every few years where we have to go over to the county court and find a judge with an affidavit, with a sworn affidavit, and get the warrant. I think that covers it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Do you have any problem with that first paragraph if we remove poor aesthetic appearance?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions, council? All right. Is there someone who would like to speak? This is not a public hearing, but
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't know the rules, but.
come to the mic if you will, please.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Doug Nelson. I live here in Kerrville, right down the oldest part of Kerrville. It's a lovely place, but we do indeed have some properties in the area. For lack of a better term, they're just junk. And those of us who live there and keep our yards and our homes in good shape, when you have a house on either side of you that's literally falling down, and I appreciate, you know, somebody comes by and says, well, it looks fine to me. Well, it doesn't look fine to me when I'm trying to keep my house looking okay. So we have some houses in our neighborhood that have been sitting there for 20 years. So how long does this process take? I mean, does the city, I know somebody said something to these people. I've said something to the zoning people. And I don't know what that complaint process is. I mean, do you just keep complaining about it and eventually somebody listens and I mean, I don't want to take somebody's home away from them if they're living in it. But I can promise you that in the 300 block of West Main, there are at least 3 houses that are sitting there that you could put drug dealers in, or little kids, or anything else you wanted, because nobody seems to pay attention. The police department, God bless y'all, you solved one of the problems over there with a man named Richard. You know who I'm talking about, and that solved that. But that house just comes and goes. I mean, there's windows that are sometimes left open. Well, I've gone in the backyard, I'm not trying to trespass, but as a concerned citizen, how does that all work is beyond me. I'm sorry, but that's your problem. That's the city's problem, and I want you to understand that, you know, many of you people, I know of your reputations, and I know you want to do right, but please somehow give us citizens a hand here. That's a really old part of Kerrville, and it's a beautiful section of Kerrville. I just don't know where to go with it, I guess. I mean,
Well, I think what you need to talk to Code Development. Go see them. Let
and
them
I will
know.
do that. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate it, you letting me come up.
Thank you.
Yes,
This
ma'am.
is the draft ordinance, if you'd like to have that and see what's being proposed.
Appreciate that.
And unfortunately, as we have said earlier, we can't do it just on looks. It's a safety issue, and there's, I understand what you're saying, but there's a difference there, and
I get that,
So,
I understand
yeah.
that, but it's also well-known in the neighborhood that people come and go out of those houses all the time.
Well, and that's spoken to in
Yes,
this.
ma'am.
Mhm.
And I think that's important.
yeah.
If you're living next door to that house, how do you know what's going on over there in the middle of the night? You know, I mean, I don't know, but I appreciate your attention, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. But do, talk to Code Development, talk to the police department.
They've done a great job, the
Good.
police have done a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, council, are we ready for a motion?
I believe so.
All right. Would someone like to make it?
Go ahead. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Instead of, I mean, to try to make it as simple as possible, you
Yes,
could
thank
just, the motion could be, motion to adopt ordinance number 2023-14 with the changes reflected in the first whereas.
Perfect.
And I've captured all those.
Okay.
I'll make that motion then.
All right, we have a second. All right, we have a second from Brenda. All in favor, raise your right hand, and it passes 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, one more, 7C.
Ordinance number 2023-15, an ordinance amending chapter 46, Environment of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, by adding a new Article 4, Junked Vehicles, such article to replace Article 11 in chapter 102, providing an effective date and providing other matters relating to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, one more time.
One more time. This one's only 50 pages, promise. It has been 22 years. It has been 22 years since this ordinance was updated or amended. Since 2017, a total of 164 code enforcement cases have been created, with 12 cases for this fiscal year. In the 5 years, we have had 2 cases end up in municipal court. 1 case resulted in the removal of vehicles, and the other continues to be addressed. Code enforcement does a wonderful job of working with owners to abate junk vehicles. However, the recommended changes further supports code enforcement efforts. It is also through the Texas Transportation Code, Chapter 683, Subchapter 11, junk vehicles. This is where the state defines what a junk vehicle is. And I do have a bit of a trivia for you. You asked me last time what VTCA means, and it is Verdant's Texas Code Annotated. Basically, it's the laws of the state of Texas updated and printed following each legislative year.
Okay.
I hope that comes up in a trivia question.
As we mentioned earlier, this ordinance will now be in a new chapter and article. The junk vehicle ordinance will be moved to Chapter 46, Environmental, and Article 4. We feel that this is the best fit, as junk vehicles may pose an environmental hazard due to oil leaks and other potential hazards that they can pose or create. For example, finding vermin living in the vehicles. These are the major changes that you see. And the sections are identified in the new ordinance. The current ordinance mainly outlines the procedure for how to address junk vehicles within the city. The new proposed ordinance provides a more robust ordinance that addresses the declaration, enforcement, where junk vehicles are prohibited, and the communications to the state. The process for abatement is that a vehicle has to be identified as a junk vehicle, notification to the owner of the vehicle, and they have 10 days to address or request a hearing, a public hearing in municipal court, and lastly, remove or dispose of the vehicle and notice to the state. Questions?
All right, council?
Pretty clear cut.
I had a little bit more trouble with going through this, and I just need a little bit of clarification. I think it's okay. I just want to be clear on something. So on page 2, junked vehicle, item 2, it says displays an expired license plate or registration sticker, or doesn't have a license plate, so we could automatically consider that a junked vehicle if it has an expired sticker?
Yes, it could be. A lot of times what you see is when we've come across vehicles that have that, it's been expired for many years or many months.
I understand. I mean, I've been late on an inspection before, and I was just thinking, that seemed, okay, it's more than that? Okay.
I don't think you drive a wrecked, dismantled, partially dismantled.
It has to be and. Okay, thank you, that's the clarification I need. Thank you for that word is important then. All right, and so and then on page 3, we're also saying if a car is not drivable for 30 days, that it can be considered a junked vehicle?
Inoperable and has remained, right. And a junk vehicle, again, it's in the driveway, it's visually, you can see it from the public right-of-way or property, so, yeah, that's it.
Okay. I've never had that situation, but I just wonder if 30 days is. I don't know, do any of you think that 30 days is?
Well, if it's complaint driven.
I mean, all the cases that we have are generally.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that, again, we get through 99.9%
Yeah.
of cases.
Right.
This is really just gives our prosecutorial staff, when that 1% goes to court, it helps them have some leverage to make changes for frustrated neighbors.
Yeah.
And then I think it also mentions it's aircraft or watercraft, so it could be a boat. Probably wouldn't be an airplane, but
Right.
could definitely be a boat.
And let's see. On page 5, section 46.78. A2, the vehicle or vehicle part is stored or parked in a lawful manner. What is a lawful, what would we consider a lawful manner to be?
Which one are you? Oh, I see, B.
I just wasn't sure what the definition of that would be.
Well, I mean, and really for the intent and purposes of Kerrville's codes, we really don't have a lot of parking restrictions. I mean, I'm sure you've seen people that are parking on the front lawn. I mean, we don't have any prohibition against that. So this is, I would say 90% of this ordinance is taken right out of state law, which I think is both, it's an interesting dynamic with cities, and especially home rule cities and state law. But I think the reason you do that, the reason I think we should do that as the city attorney is in case there's any sort of case law that delves out of this, we can use it, we can apply it, yeah. But
I just wanted to, I just had a little bit, maybe it was just too late at night. I just had a little bit more trouble following this ordinance, but, those were all the questions I had, so.
Thank you, Mike, for saying that. I was going to mention that. It's really more to protect us if we end up in legal issues over all of this.
right, and remember, you read the whole thing. So this is in connection with the business of a licensed vehicle dealer or junkyard. So I don't know this to be the case, and I don't want to put Mr. Paxton on the spot, but say our zoning code with respect to junkyards, you have to put a fence around it. Well, if this car is 30 days outside the fence, then it wouldn't be parked in a legal manner, and we could use the zoning code in conjunction with this to go remedy that situation.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, any questions from this end of council?
I was wondering on page 2 how we were going to enforce the inoperable definition. Definition of an inoperable vehicle means the inability to start the engine of a motor vehicle and drive the vehicle under its own power and distance for more than 300 feet. So if there was a complaint driven, would we require the owner to get in the vehicle and drive it for more than 300 feet in order to determine that? Or what do we do there? Because what if it's just sitting there, and how do we know it can actually drive 300 feet? What are we going to do to enforce that?
Well, a lot of times what we do is we just have them start the vehicle, and if it starts up, then generally we kind of go with, okay, the vehicle works, but if there's other things that are missing, for example, registration and some other things, then we go tires
Right.
or some other things, then those are additional questions that we ask from the owner of the vehicle itself.
Okay, so we won't be testing the 300 feet distance then, really?
No, it's just because it's an opportunity to provide additional resources for us. So think of it, if it goes to municipal court and they drive the vehicle there, and
That's a defense for them to say, come on now.
It works.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, this is not there is no public hearing. Is there anyone who has a comment they would like to make? All right, council, are we ready for a motion? I will recommend that we approve ordinance number 2023-15 on first reading.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 second readings here, items that have come before us before. 8A, will you read us in, Shelley?
Ordinance number 2023-10, second reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 66, Library of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kerrville, Texas, by amending Article 2, Library Advisory Board to reduce the number of members of the Library Advisory Board, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, and providing other matters relating to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
All right. Kim, do you have words for us?
No, ma'am.
All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve ordinance number 2023-10 on second reading.
Do we have a second?
Second. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
All right, Joe has seconded that. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it is approved 5-0. Thank you very much. And our very last one.
Ordinance number 2023-11, second reading, an ordinance amending the city's fiscal year 2023 FY 2023 budget to reallocate funds for items encumbered within the city's fiscal year 2022 FY 2022 budget, but where such items were neither received nor paid for during FY 2022, to transfer unspent FY 2022 street maintenance funds to the FY 2023 Capital Projects Fund, to amend and add a fee to the fee schedule, and to make other amendments as provided. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
Julie, can you handle this?
I did that. No, I did provide you with a copy just as a reference.
You did, yes, yes. All right, council, any questions for Julie before we bring this up to vote? All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 2023-11 on second reading.
Second? Thank you, Roman. All in favor, raise your right hand. and it is approved 5-0. All right, that brings us to the end of our evening. Is there anything that anyone wishes to, I don't believe we need to go into executive session. Are there any items that we need to put on future agendas?
I have one that I'd like council to consider and see if we can get discussion on this. We just made an amendment to section 26-38 of our Code of Ordinances, which was regarding the construction of a fence. I'd like to have a future agenda item on, well, I guess there's no way of knowing whether I'm gonna be reelected or not, so hopefully before I'm off, so maybe if we can do it by the next meeting. If not, I think we have one more. Yeah, so maybe hopefully the next meeting that we have, the very next meeting. And I would like for us to consider amending that section 26-38 to look at the height definition of a fence, which is currently you have to get a permit if it's more than 2 1/2 feet, which is 30 inches. I'd like for us to consider changing that height, and I'd like that to be on the future agenda.
But what would you be changing the height to?
My proposal would be to go with like the International Building Code has, I think is what it was called. It was 5, 6, or 7 feet. And so I'd like for us to consider one of those.
Do we have a second for that proposal? It dies for lack of a second. All right. Anything else, council? All right, at 7:41, we will close the council meeting. Thank you all.